By a fever, the PDM team lose 5 men. This morning, the other 4 retire from the race. For PDM, the tour is over. Hi, I'm Phil Liggett, we're in Quimper, and you're watching the 1991 Tour de France exclusively on SBS television right around Australia. Again, and welcome to the Tour de France, and I'm afraid it's true, the PDM team this morning not arriving here in the square in Quimper to face up to what is the last flat stage of the Tour before we go down to the mountains. So in just 24 hours, the PDM team have fallen away from top challengers to non-entities in this year's Tour de France. And when the speaker, Daniel Manjas, announced to the crowd this morning they wouldn't be coming to the start, there was a great feeling of disappointment. I think it's true to say the whole organisation of the Tour de France is feeling the same way. You know, it's not yet been officially explained exactly what is wrong with the team, but I guess as time goes on, we will find out. Now, this morning, this is now the new general classification in the Tour de France. Greg LeMond is still the leader. In second place, Jean-Modeline Abdou-Japarov. Now up into third place, replacing Eric Breukink, is Miguel Indurain. Jean-Francois Bernard is fourth. Gianni Bugno is fifth. Of the rest, we have Thierry Marie now in sixth place, Luc Leblanc seventh, and of the other big names, Pedro Delgado is 9th and Claudio Chiappucci is 18th. One of the 6 riders in the PDM team who refused to give up yesterday was Falk Boden, the champion of Germany in his first Tour. But when he arrived at the finish in Quimper, he was eliminated by the judges for arriving too late.
The elimination time is calculated on a percentage of the winner's time every day. It is dependent on 2 factors. A, the type of race. For example, the elimination in a time trial is the winning time plus 25%, but this can be as low as 6% for a flat stage. B, the added percentage is dependent on the average speed of the winner, so the faster the stage, the higher the percentage, by 1% for every kilometre per hour. There are exceptions to the elimination time. A rider can be pulled back into the race on 4 counts. 1, if the rider has had a crash or a mechanical incident in the early part of the stage. 2, if the race is held under extreme conditions, for example in a snowstorm. 3, if the rider has been slowed in his progress along the route, for example by traffic getting onto the race route. 4, the last but not least, if the rider has shown an exceptional amount of courage or energy to finish. Falk Boden certainly showed an exceptional amount of courage to finish yesterday, but the referees didn't pull him back. Probably wise from a medical point of view.
Well, in the end, I suppose the elimination of Falk Boden somewhat academic, because the whole of the PDM team did not start this morning as the peloton rolled away from Quimper, ironically under warm skies. But just before the start, our colleague from NOS Television, Mark Smits, did catch up with a member of the PDM team, Jonathan Bowyer, himself an ex-rider in the Tour de France, and he told us what happened.
Last night the riders still were a little bit sick. They didn't eat that much, but they still have a fever, and some of them slept better than the others, but they didn't sleep very well.
So this morning, what did the doctor decide, and what did Jan Gisbers decide?
The doctor decided that it would definitely not be very safe to keep riding because the fever was still high, on especially Sean Kelly, and Jan Gisbers decided also with the doctor that it would not be very good to keep riding. It's too dangerous.
So this means that the whole PDM team withdraws here in Quimper?
That is true. The whole PDM team will withdraw in Quimper and go home.
On a race like the Tour de France, riders will take in between 5,000 and 7,000 calories a day, a good 2,000 of them at breakfast. Before the race, they stock up on fruit or whatever else is available. Then it's meals on wheels. Domestiques can be relied on to get around in when drinks are called for, as they continually are to stave off dehydration. But 2,000 calories doesn't go far on the road. And for major refueling, feeding areas are set up along the route, where the various teams' backup crews gather to dispense packed lunches. On today's stage, there are two, at 86 and 162 kilometres. The rush for food can sometimes be dangerous, not least when the discreetly sponsored feed bags get caught in the spokes. It's not exactly healthy for the environment either. Evidently few of the cyclists in the race carry a copy of the country code. To be fair to them though, it's hard to find a bin at 50 kilometres an hour, and most of their throwaways are picked up as souvenirs. Certainly without their movable feasts, stages like today's 246 kilometres would be hard to complete.
Now, the route today, 246 kilometres, the last long route of the Tour de France over flat roads. There are 3 sprints along the way for bonus times. Today, the last day, of course, for bonuses, because after this, the mountains will force the time gaps. It's a long, hot summer's day for the riders in the Tour. And now let's join the action after 18.5 kilometres today at Rospordon. And believe me, the field has got off to a cracking start. And the winner here was Abdou Japarov, out-sprinting Laurent Jalabert and Johan Museu. At the next check, at 162.5 kilometres covered at Arzal, the second big sprint of the day, there was a breakaway in progress of some 10 riders, and Rick van Slyke winning here ahead of Christophe Leven and then ahead of Quevedo. Now, the riders at this point over 30 minutes ahead of the best expected time, so they're hardly hanging around, are they? And the breakaway is on. And as we join the main field now, with the riders sprinting off the front one by one, we have moved along the road now to the other side of Pont Château, and the field have been chasing for over 100 kilometres, this group of 10 riders, and they are just about to pick them all up.
Well, from that group of 10 riders, only 4 remain. There was a split as we went through Pont Château there, and 4 riders still remain in the front with a very tender lead of 19 seconds. Michel Vermotte, the Belgian from the RMO team, Rick van Slyke, Mark van Orso from Panasonic, and Christophe Leven. But there are lots of attacks going off the front of this bunch as the riders try to pull them back.
There's confirmation of the bonuses gained today by the rather familiar names. 1 or 2 strange ones. Rick van Slyke didn't feature in this race, and those 6 seconds aren't going to help his overall position really very much. But Abdou Japarov consolidating his second place overall, because he's now 1 minute and 3 seconds behind Greg LeMond in the yellow jersey.
These 2 riders trying to get across to that breakaway are Mauro Gianetti and Van Lanker from the Panasonic team, and the rest of the field starting to string out behind them. The lead at the moment still 19 seconds and very, very tentative. I should think they'll get reeled in quite soon.
So just about 50 kilometres to go to the finish, and they have this little group in sight, but believe me, they are persistent, because they've been around 25 seconds now for what, and those 20 seconds confirmed, for what has to be the last 20 to 25 kilometres. I think the reason being, Paul, is that one rider in this group certainly is local. We know his wife's at the finishing line, Christophe Leven, and there he is in the blue jersey, a brief glimpse of him, and I think he would love to win here.
Well, Christophe Leven comes from just around the corner, Chateaubriand. That's his adopted town where his wife is from, and it looks very much as if this is Rolf German trying to jump away here to bridge the gap there.
Well, our first leader in the King of the Mountains, he's lost ground a little bit since the day 1 of the Tour de France. Now riding in his first tour, he's looking a very solid rider indeed. Clearly, the miles aren't telling on him. He's trying to cross the gap up to the leaders. It's an interesting format, this, Paul, that the big fields are allowing these individual riders to nip off the front, because if they do contact the leaders and give some fresh power to that breakaway, it might go again.
Well, after yesterday, Panasonic assumed the whole part of their work chasing down Thierry Laurent when he was away, and when it came to the end, they had no strength left to pull back any other breakaway. So I think now they must be a little bit worried, and other teams too, a little bit worried about doing all the work and getting surprised at the end. Difficult after all this time with teams racing to keep the field together, to keep that hard work up.
Well, with one more special sprint to come at 237 kilometres. We're 212 kilometres covered in the race at the minute. So they're just about 25 kilometres from the final sprint with bonuses of this year's Tour de France. There, Peter de Klerk in the polka dot jersey, leading in the King of the Mountains in action today. Won the first climb at the Côte du Petit Gaillon after 2 kilometres out, and he surprisingly found a challenge coming from Gert-Jan Teunissen. So I think Teunissen is testing his legs before we go down to the Pyrenees. Let's go back up to the leaders.
Well, as we join the leaders, there are 2 riders actually trying to get across. Rolf Herblain, and just a little bit further behind him, Patrice Esnault, the Frenchman on the Amaya Spanish team. German can just see them in front of him. It looks as if he's going to make contact there, but you see the bunch now beginning to react a little bit as they go round the roundabout there, starting to stretch out into a long line as the teams probably from Carrera will be the team that will try and chase to advantage Abdou-Zaporov.
And there is Abdou-Zaporov in the green jersey, and they're just going over one of the sleeping policemen. France is putting these down in a number of its towns now, and it's rather uncomfortable for the Tour de France when they hit them at speed. So the field here is still dicing. It's interesting to see that they've maintained this high average speed. And there's another sleeping policeman as they bounce their way on towards the finish today in Saint-Herblain. That breakaway holding on.
We're into our second week on the Tour de France now, and I hope you're all phoning in for the competition. The prizes are great, the Motorola phone and a Europa bicycle. Here's the information.
To enter our Motorola Europa bike and phone prize package, just nominate who you think will be leading the tour on the 22nd of July and you'll be in the draw. Call the number on your screen by midnight Saturday and leave your nomination name and phone number. Even if you miss out, you're also in the draw for a trip to Paris courtesy of UTA Air France and an 8-day cycle tour from Outdoor Travel. Keep watching our coverage for more details.
Things have changed a little bit. Rolf Herblain, we saw moving clear of the field to catch the break. Well, he not only caught them, he's gone through on his own now. He's being chased on the road by Michel Vermont, an original member of the break. Dmitry Konishev has caught Vermont, and everybody else is back in the big field. So a big crowd here again welcoming the Tour de France, and Rolf Herblain, the first rider to lead in the King of the Mountains competition. He was in that big breakaway on the opening road race stage at Lyon over 114 kilometers, where Greg LeMond and Eric Breukink paved the way to the top of the overall classification. Breukink, of course, sadly not with us any longer. There's the sprint banner, the rider's eye's view, 10 kilometers to go at the same point. And Rolf Herblain from Switzerland takes it clearly. The last time check we had over the field was 50 seconds, but there's been so much reaction down there. I'm quite amazed at these riders who stayed away in front of the peloton today.
Well, the speed has been high all the time. Every time check we got, the race was faster than its recommended average speed, and in fact 47 kilometers an hour on a day like this is extremely fast, which is why it's surprising that the breakaways have stayed clear. Jarmin here, Abdou-Zaporov just jumping through from the main field to try and get the points and the bonuses necessary to keep his green jersey and to move that little bit closer to the yellow jersey of Greg LeMond. They can't be very far behind now. I would say they're about 35 seconds behind Jarmin. So as the bunch speeds up, they may well catch him in the last few kilometers of the race here.
And that victory has brought the green jersey of Abdou-Zaporov into 59 seconds behind Greg LeMond. There's a bonus today of 20 seconds. And if he won the stage, that would make him 39 seconds down. And I think, in all honesty, that's the closest he will get in this year's Tour de France.
But now Abdou-Zaporov has slipped away in a little group, and the pressure of the chase has split the bunch completely. There are 5 or 6 riders in front. One of those was Gérard Rouet, who was in his hometown of Rennes a couple of days ago, very upset because he didn't show well. But more important is Abdou-Zaporov has slipped into this group here, and if this group can get away, he may well steal the yellow jersey off LeMond before we go to the mountains.
Well, he knows what he's done. He's driving the train along here in the sprint. Their average speed today, an amazing 47 kilometers an hour, and the fastest that the actual schedule, that's the organisation schedule for the Tour today, was 40 kilometers an hour. So they're riding 7 kilometers an hour quicker than anyone expected, and this little breakaway is taking their advantage. And the time to do it, Paul, good tactic, is to do it at the sprint point.
Well, definitely, because everybody's sort of blows a sigh of relief as they go over a sprint point and said, God, that was hard. We'll just have a little bit of a rest. And if somebody's got that little bit of go in them, they carry on over the top. And that's just exactly what Abjazaparov did here.
And Thierry Claverola's going to that breakaway as well. Well, just a quick breathing space to answer just a couple of your questions, and thanks for sending them in. You've asked about Paul Sherwin. Well, I won't embarrass him and ask him to explain what he's done in the Tour de France, but his best finish in the Tour de France came in 1978 when he finished in 68th place. But in the same year, he actually rose up to 9th place overall in the event before falling back. And he also finished 5th on the Champs-Élysées on the final stage. I think he probably cherishes that as much as anything. Back to the action, and now the gap's being bridged here. It's the TVM rider who's going across the gap.
Well, it's Konishev going away again. That group with Abjazaparov looks as if it's been caught by the main field, and they're starting to split up. Another little splinter group of 4 riders going clear, but Konishev obviously giving everything he's got today to try and get a stage win.
Memories of Po a year ago. That's where the race will restart from on Thursday, and that was where Dmitry Konishev last won, or in fact the only time he's won a stage of the Tour de France. He was the first Soviet rider to win there in the Tour de France last year. There's the gap, 28 seconds to Rolf Yermont, and Konishev trying to tempt the rest out to come and pick him up. It's good to see him racing so well after the accident he had in the Tour of Spain, and he might well be a rider who's going to come to good form when it matters most now as we go into the mountains for the second part of this week. A lot of riders still wanting to race hard. Oops, I'm glad they missed our motorbike.
Another man who was away yesterday, that's in the green and black jersey from Wyman, is Michel Dernier. He won't contribute to this breakaway group because he's got his teammate Rolf Jarman, the ex-Swiss champion, in the front there, and there Thierry Claverola, the man who's supposed to be a climber but is in the front of the race on the flat stage today.
And this looks like the 5 kilometres to go banner. Rolf Jarman still hanging on. He actually attacked from the front group at just over 20 kilometres from the finish. So he's been in the lead now for 15 kilometres, that's around 9 miles, and the main field are not very far behind. In fact, those following cars must be thinking shortly of coming out of that gap.
Well, it looks as if that is Rolf Jarman just about to be picked up. 2 kilometres to go. What a sad thing to see. He really deserved that win. It looks to me there as if that's Etienne de Wilde or Soren Lilholt has jumped away. He's jumped clear of the field a little bit there with Capucci in his wheel.
And the Carrera team forcing the pace as they swamp and push Rolf Jarman back into the main field. He'll have to hang on now and just come through to the finish. And you can see the crowd here at Saint-Herblain. We're on the Saint-Herblain really is a suburb of Nantes. So right down on the Loire now. And the weather has come once again very, very warm indeed as the sprint starts to now wind up on the far side of the road.
Rudy Darnan's leading out there. He's gone straight away down the right-hand side of the road, but doesn't get much distance before somebody jumps onto his wheel. It's all together now, and it's going to be, I think, a big bunch sprint for the line. Bunyo moving up into 3rd place. Le Mans there in 4th place.
Yes, and Le Mans, as always, Paul, keeping out of trouble in case of a touch of wheels. He may be even thinking of a cheeky sprint win. That would be a psychological blow if he won here, wouldn't it?
Well, he may do, but it looks like Charly Mottet has gone down the left-hand side of the road there as well. The attack's coming thick and fast. Phil Anderson in 5th place there, just behind Le Mans. Mottet's got 20 or 30 metres. He's a kind of rider who could pull this off.
Well, he sensed the right moment. There was just a little bit of delay by the riders as they settled in for the sprint. And Charly Mottet has taken a dive for it. You see they're hesitating because nobody wants to come by the man on the front. And Mottet is going to profit from this. We've seen World Championships won like this. The one that comes to mind is that of Joop Zoetemelk when Greg LeMond was the big loser in Italy in 1985. You see, nobody will overtake the leading rider. If they hesitate, Mottet will sneak this one. He's no sprinter, but this is his chance, and he's taken it extremely well. The RMO have one win on Bastille Day with Mauro Ribeiro. He was a Brazilian on a French team, and now it could well be in the mecca of cycling in Brittany as we come on to the Loire in Nantes. It's going to be Charly Mottet who takes the prize, and he's coming for the win. He got one win out of it in the finish of the Tour last year down in the mid-south of France, but the sprinters are coming now. Museo's having a dig too, and I told you it was slightly uphill. It might prove the downfall of Mottet, but no, he's gone for it now. Watch how fast the sprinters closing on Charly. Can he hang on to the end? He's got about 100 metres to go. He's looking under his legs, and he's still Abdul Jafarov is coming now. He's sprinting for his life, but too late. Mottet, Abdul Jafarov, Museo, Noah Jalabert, Olaf Ludwig. The sprinters were fooled on the line, and Charly Mottet took it out of them from right under their noses. And Mottet finishing off an excellent stage of the Tour de France to bring to an end too the flat stages of this year's race. Mottet wins. Look at the battle behind. Abdul Jafarov all over the road as usual. I think just beat there. Oh no, the same Museo got him on the line in the photo.
So you see, you don't have to be a sprinter to win a flat stage of the Tour de France. Charly Mottet attacking 1 kilometre out and fooling them all. In second place, Johan Museu, and in third place, Jamaluddin Abdul Jafarov. In the yellow jersey tonight, no change overall, is Greg LeMond. This is the end of the flat stages now, and the big challenge of the Pyrenees lies just 48 hours away. Jamaluddin Abdul Jafarov is 51 seconds behind, but he tells us he can't climb, so we may have to look to names like Indurain, Jean-Francois Bernard, and even Pedro Delgado. And on today's stage, Phil Anderson tried again to win the stage. He was in a leading group of 6 riders for quite a long way, but the big pack swept him up. Phil Anderson will now have to try again, perhaps even in the mountains. Stephen Hodge, his duty's quite clear. He's a long way behind the overall lead, but he was never intended to lead this Tour de France. His team leader is a Spaniard, Marino Lajareta. Now Stephen must work for him in the Pyrenees. Now, this is the first time the Tour de France has had such saturating exposure in Australia, and here on SBS we're trying to explain exactly what it's all about as we move along the road. Now, with the teams, one of the most important men on their squad is called a soigneur. Here's Adrian Swift to describe exactly what he does.
The word soigneur literally translates as helper. If a rider's job is to ride his bike, then the soigneur's job is to do everything else.
We try to short circuit any stress that they might have. That means going to get toothpaste, or, you know, from doing massage to going to get toothpaste if they need it. So during a race like the Tour de France, essentially what they have to do is ride their bike, eat, sleep, and that's it. The other needs are taken care of by the soigneurs.
The role of the soigneur isn't just to provide a physical rub-down for the rider. He's also there for a bit of mental massage as well.
There we go.
Spain or
From Spain?
what's her name?
I can't remember, but yeah, I wish she was in my car.
Yeah, is she following the race then?
Yeah.
She's quite a nice woman anyway.
Very nice.
And the soigneur's technique has to differ to suit different riders in the team.
It can vary. If a sprinter, for example, rides a big mountain stage, of course their legs are usually going to be hard as blocks because they're not meant to climb hills, and they're usually riding off the back and just riding to survive and to make the time limit. The climber's legs, however, can be quite supple and relaxed in that their legs are built for that kind of stress, so they can actually feel as good after a mountain stage as they did before they went into it.
This form of remedial massage can happen any time, as a warm-up before the start, but more importantly, after the race, to get the rider ready for another day on the road.
The body needs assistance in moving a lymph, which is the sewer of the body, and processing it, back into the bloodstream.
And after all the toxins have been purged and the rider is ready for another 200 kilometres, the soigneur can rest. Your hands need a massage after spending all afternoon on the table with the boys?
Actually, our massage is lifting a couple of beers, you know. That's the kind of massage that we normally get at the end of the day.
Well, that's our program for today. Remember, there's no program tomorrow because the riders are on their unofficial rest day. They're flying from Nantes in the north of France to Pau, the gateway to the Pyrenees. And believe me, when you join us the day after tomorrow, we'll be in the high mountains, and what a day's racing that should be. Now, there are 2 Australian riders in the Tour de France. There are many more actually following the race just to keep an eye on everybody and enjoy the unique atmosphere. When we come back in our next program, Adrian Swift will introduce you to them. But for the moment, from the SBS team here in the north of France, the next time we speak will be in the south. Goodbye.